All right, welcome. It's January 23rd at 6:20. This is the Safety and Health Committee, and to my right is Mr. Whitten, to my left, Mrs. Marshall, and we are here to discuss providing a recommendation of council regarding permits allowing urban beekeeping in certain residential districts. Mr. Davis, would you like to share the updates?
Yes, thank you. At the January 9th meeting, we discussed pros and cons of urban beekeeping. In that discussion, we talked about a survey of communities, and then this board, or this council, a committee, recommended that we reach out to the Ohio State Extension, the Miami Valley Beekeepers Association, and the Miami County Apiary Inspector, and we have done that. I do appreciate those organizations, the quick response I received from them. We did incorporate a lot of their items. It was full of good information, and with that, we provided that into the recommendation, which you see in your packet. It does allow urban beekeeping in all of our single-family residential zoning districts, except for the most dense district, which is the R5. The rest of them, a lot of the rules were tweaked a little bit, but relatively remain the same, such as allowing 2 hives on a lot. We have them being in the rear yard only. We have those, each colony can, we put like restrictions on the amount of frames, which we received from the Miami Valley Beekeepers Association, so we took those items. We also modeled our ordinance after the city of Vandalia, which was previously announced as a Bee City USA. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I would like to state that if we do move forward with this, maybe it become a contingency recommendation, because we would be requesting changes to the zoning code that would have to go through the Planning Commission, and they have not seen these regulations yet.
So there would not be legislation on the February agenda.
Because it has to go to...
Because we'll go to the Planning Commission meets on Wednesday. We'll introduce it, see what they think there. But if you recommend this condition on that, then unless they recommend changes to this, then we would not need to come back here. We would just go to council and start the rezoning process.
Questions after reading
I do
the
not.
recommendation?
I do not. I think I'm fully on board.
Okay. I do like that we changed it. They must be a resident of that dwelling location. That is a good one. I'm glad to see that was added. I'm glad to see that we had 2 hives added instead of just 1 at those locations. Just highlighting. And I think everything else sort of stayed the same from there. Questions or comments from other council members? Mr. Pierce.
Thank you. From your studies, have you seen who has legal responsibility if the bees were to be provoked in attack?
I would assume that would be a civil issue between neighboring property owners.
So it's not going to be codified. That would be something different then.
What do you mean?
In this legislation, it wouldn't be attached. That would just go on the back of an existing city ordinance.
Yeah, we would treat it like an accessory use, just like a shed, fence, things like that. As long as it follows the regulations, it would be allowed, so it would be treated exactly the same.
Okay. And originally, when this idea was brought forward, I believe that what I heard was that the person who wanted to have the bees would get the permission of their neighbors in order to do that. Is that something we're looking at?
We were advised against doing that from our law director.
Okay.
So that's why that is not included in the ordinance.
All right.
Mr. Phillips?
Thanks, sir. Do you have any idea, or are we basically cutting and pasting from Vandalia's ordinance for our legislation for the...
I don't know if we're cutting and pasting. We took a lot of the regulations they had and mixed some of our own in there, so I don't think it's a cut and paste. I don't think it's fair to state that. But it is modeled after the city of Vandalia, yes.
So we have started working on that language for the legislation?
We have not started working on that. We would start if this committee wants to move forward, then we would start.
Okay. I don't have further questions for you, but I did have a question earlier to Mr. Bailey, who was the, kind of the responsible person for getting this started as a resident here in the city. And I don't know if you can answer this, Mr. Davis, but I know Mr. Bailey can. And down in the weeds of this, I asked what was an adequate amount of water, because I thought perhaps that needed to be outlined, for, you put a bucket out there or a cup or whatever. Mr. Bailey did answer that I'm sorry, was it quart per hive?
Quart per hive, depending on demand. Obviously, summertime is really hot, it's probably going to require a little more.
Can we,
Up to the-
all right. Mr. Bailey, can you come up to the microphone just so that people can hear and you can answer the questions?
Okay. So it's approximately a quart per hive, depending on demand.
And so that needs to be really monitored by the hive keeper in order to prevent a swarming or a drifting of lack of water source, that they would be looking elsewhere to go, and that sort of thing.
That's correct. And I think that's in the legislation, a water source,
Right.
so many feet from the hive, wasn't that part of it? That's correct.
And
Yeah.
adequately maintained and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it just comments that adequate supply of fresh water within 15 feet. So it leaves to interpretation
Right.
what adequate supply of water is.
So bees collect water from a variety of sources. It's not going to just be this bird bath that's 15 feet from their hive
Right,
while they're out foraging.
right. Yeah, but as long as it's there, it is a likelihood that it's their home, and they have their utilities there that
Right.
is readily accessible to them.
That's
So to speak.
correct. Yes.
Did you read a copy of the recommendations?
I did. Mr. Davis sent it
Okay.
to me, and
And did you have any concerns with what was established, or thought it was over excessive on restrictions or anything?
no, I did not. I thought it looked really good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Twist,
Yes.
I'm not sure you might know the answer to this, but I was interested to find out at our last discussion that we have an apiary inspector in Miami County. And I'm just curious if we know if that inspector inspects every registered hive, every year? What's the,
He does every year. We did reach out to him to make sure the workload wasn't going to put him over the edge, and it would not. So he assured me he would be able to handle anything we took on, so.
okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, any other thoughts from the audience on the bee, if they've read the recommendation? Okay. What would you guys like to do?
Move forward.
Move forward.
Yeah, if we can take it to the planning commission, that'd be great. I think it looks good as
We'll do
is.
that.
Anything else to come before the safety and health?